looking at our rules of procedure. And I want to thank Ms. Schertler and council for working diligently on this. Tonight we're going to look at the ethics code and ex parte communication. So has everyone had an opportunity to look at this? Because it was sent out over the weekend as well. Okay. And right. I was just reminded to remind you all that this is just for discussion, as the email included that we will not vote on anything tonight. This is just for discussion to get your opinion. There may be some changes, and then once we adopt our full rules of procedure, then it will be included as well. Okay? So looking at our first portion, ethics code and conflicts of interest, that is something new, the conflicts of interest portion. And I'll just read it for the public in case they have not heard it. To avoid conflicts of interest, commission members are subject to and must comply with the county ethics ordinance. The ethics code, section 170-7, requires annual submission of a financial statement. Late or incomplete financial statements may be referred to the county commissioners by the ethics board for action, which may include removal. To avoid a conflict of interest, a commission member cannot use their position for personal, family, or business gain. This would include participating in discussion or voting on a project or issue. 2 guidelines for ethics are transparency and, if in doubt, ask. Are there any comments or any discussion?
Madam Chair, isn't all this information included in the financial disclosure? And you have to I think it covers that in that document. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'd like someone to tell me that I'm wrong.
No, you're not. You're right. It does cover it in the document that we see annually. But I thought it was a good idea to include this so that it's before us at all times, so that we'd understand what conflict of interest is, as it also applies to ex parte communication. So you have the code in tandem with the part 2 of the ethics code.
Yeah, but isn't this in the rules, procedures, and practices about no communication, whether it be verbal,
No,
written?
it's not. It's a very brief statement. It's very incomplete. I think we discussed this when we made the rules that would include, but it's not there. It just simply states that the rules of ex parte communication is improper and may provide legal grounds for overturning a decision.
There's also a definition.
And the definition at the back.
Well, in my opinion, we're all adults, and I think as adults that we can conduct ourselves in a professional manner. And again, I think this is covered. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my feeling on that. Because you get to the point where there are going to be so many rules and regulations, you won't be able to do anything.
Well, it's also for the public, not just for us. So, I mean, as long as everyone is on the same page, it also helps. In the definition, it does say verbal, written, electronic, or graphic received outside of the record, but that's in the definitions. If I'm not going to look at the definitions, then I need to have it actually in the procedures as we're going along. I don't know that someone would turn to that. So it's just a matter of covering all bases.
Well, that's my 2 cents on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Bowling. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else?
If we're still talking about the ethics part, what was the reason for the change? Why did we need to change anything?
It was just something, because of the times that are changing, just something to be aware of, especially since we're trying to be a bit more transparent with the public, and it's just stepping out into the sunshine.
Well, we used to refer to the County Code of Civility. Is that no longer applicable?
We did not change that. I'm just adding,
Okay.
yeah, this is just a change in the,
So the only thing you're adding is the second subparagraph.
right.
Okay.
Any other discussion? You guys okay with that? Okay. So let's move on to ex parte communication. And we have a lengthier definition this go-round. It states, ex parte communications are communications by telephone, email, letter, face-to-face conversation, social media, or other off-the-record contact in connection with a matter which is before the Planning Commission which has not reached a final decision. So let's just break this up and just look at the definition first. Are there any comments on the definition? Anything that we need to include or take out, or you want to know why we did it?
As a new member, I've always been confused by this term and whether it's the same thing as 2 or 3 of us talking about something on the commission.
That comes under the Open Meetings Act.
That's open meeting.
Okay, but that's not referenced in our rules and procedures anywhere, and I think it should be.
Okay.
I was thinking maybe this was the area, but if it's not ex parte,
No, it's not. It's Open
we need to
Meetings, Open Meetings
include
Act.
it somewhere nearby.
So would you like something on just open meetings?
Just in terms of, this is talking about who we should not talk to outside of the commission.
Right.
But I'd like to make it clear in our rules and procedures who we can talk to within this commission, how many of us can gather and not have it become a public meeting.
Okay. If you look at page 3 of your current rules of procedures, right under the Ethics Code is C for Open Meetings Act, and so we can insert it there.
Just like you inserted some more words for ethics, even though it's still referencing the county ethics code, I think we should do the same thing for open meetings.
Okay. Well, we will include open meetings then. Is there anything? Ms. Schertler?
Just a grammatical thing. I think if the sentence reads, or other off-the-record contact in connection with the matter before the Planning Commission, which has not reached its final decision. I don't think we need which is, because we have it.
Okay. There are a few grammatical errors, just to warn you guys. Okay. All right, let's move on to...
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry?
if you will, I just want to make sure that we understand a face-to-face conversation only pertains to a matter before the Planning Commission. If I go waterfowling with Mr. Mudd, we don't talk about what's before the Planning Commission. That's exactly what we're talking about here. We're not saying that I can't go waterfowling with Mr. Mudd.
That's something different. That's totally different.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds like fun. Okay. Sure.
I was looking at the last phrase under, after the Planning Commission, which has not reached a final decision. I think we probably need to wordsmith that a little bit more to make sure that it's very clear that we're talking about cases projects which may be under appeal before another decision-making body. So we'll probably play with that before we actually make the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Let's move on to the rule. That's B. Ex parte communication is improper if a final decision by the Commission is based on or significantly influenced by matters outside the record, then the action may provide legal grounds for overturning a decision. The only thing we added in there is if a final decision by the Commission is based on or significantly influenced by matters outside the record. And the beginning of that sentence and the ending of the sentence remains the same as it appears in our current rules. Then we have on C, the remedy. Number 1, if If a member knows or should have reason to know that the communication is ex parte, the member shall disclose the communication, setting forth the nature and substance of the contact and/or communication. The member who has been on the receiving end of the communication should either withdraw from participation or make a statement on the record affirming her or his ability to act impartially in the matter. Any comments on that? Number 2, if there is reasonable belief that ex parte communication has occurred, a member may ask the chair to ask the member believed to be on the receiving end to disclose the discussion and substance of the conversation and to assert their ability to act impartially in the matter. And the thinking there is the whole part of the reason for ex parte communication is for everybody to have the same information, not one person having more information than another. So it's just about disclosure, not about a penalty or anything like that. Any questions on that? Comments? And Part D, applicability. Number 1, this section shall not apply to legal advice rendered by the Office of the County Attorney and shall not apply to technical advice or explanation by staff rendered by or at the request of the appropriate official of the county. Is that clear? Or anything you want to add to that? Okay. And then number 2, the planning director will regularly publish and provide each member of the commission a current list of pending applications in appropriate detail to encourage the purpose of this rule. And I've already spoken to Mr. Kaisigler, and he agreed to do that so that we will know what is coming before us and you don't fall into a conversation that you didn't intend to have. Ms. Schertler?
I missed the one before. Should we, number 1, include there Mr. Viles' suggestion, because it doesn't apply to discussions between planning commission members who meet in groups less than 4. Right? I mean, should that be?
Do you want to do that plus at the Open Meetings Act? Because you're already... okay, so you mean discussing if you wanted to get together?
Well, section shall not apply to legal advice rendered by the county attorney or discussions between commission members.
Okay.
Does that?
No, because if you had 4 people discussing, then you're violating open meetings.
Yeah, I know that.
However, remember, if we keep in mind the purpose behind ex parte and the rules and how it is everybody wants to cover it is approaching it as to disclosure. So if only 3 people are having the discussion, the other 4 are not there.
In other words, that's kind of covered under open meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Okay? All right. Okay, so those are the changes that we have so far, and we will note the changes to add Mr. Viles' portion, or suggested portion of the Open Meetings Act to make it clear that only 3 is a limit for Planning Commission members to gather to discuss, and then also to wordsmith under the definition to make that a little bit clearer. Okay? All right. Anything else? Okay, well then let's move on to new business, which is the briefing on the pipeline projects submitted after adoption of the 2016 plan, and Mr. Mudd and Ms. Kelly are back again.
All righty, thank you very much. This is a topic and an issue that goes back a few months, and admittedly, I think was first requested or discussed during the prior tenure and really prior to the reorganization and the retooling of the department. Nevertheless, better late than never, so what we provided to you via email and was posted on board docs is really a short 4-item summary and a map. Both of these exhibits look to portray all new preliminary subdivision plans that have been submitted since July 1, 2016. And as the record shows, that was the real question asked at the time back in February. Can you give us a list and a map showing all new projects filed after essentially the effective date of the new comprehensive plan? So again, the map graphically shows you 4 projects in 2 locations of the county. 2 of the projects have already achieved preliminary plan approval. Those include Sunstone Grove up off of 228, as well as Stonehaven Phase 2, which is a neighborhood within St. Charles. That then leaves 2 further preliminary plans of subdivision which have yet to move forward for consideration of approval. Those include Stonehaven Phase 3, which is still under review by staff, as well as Sunstone Preserve, which